Hello, fellow Fleet and Mobility players. So, once again, it's Daniel Bland from Fleet Mobility today. And we are covering, of course, as most of you know, the latest on what's happening in terms of fleet and mobility throughout the Americas. So, managing fleet, it's a tall task, whether it be for the corporate world or when it comes to government administration. Today, we will be talking about the latter. So, zeroing in on one of the largest cities in the United States, Dallas, Texas. So, and joining us today is Vincent Olsen. So he's a 30 plus year veteran in industry working in the realms of automotive, logistics, and fleet management and stuff like that. So Vincent, he is now the assistant director for fleet management for the city of Dallas. Hello, Vincent. How are you doing there?
Doing well. Thank you for that introduction, Daniel. Doing well.
Good, good. So he was just telling me that he's like in the I guess the southern area of Dallas, and yeah, we just have a few questions. We're gonna be spending about I don't know 20-25 minutes. And first of all, I guess Vincent, you are now the assistant director for fleet management for the city of Dallas. How did you get to this position? And then what tip would you have for upcoming fleet managers?
Sure, that's a great question. Uh, I would say, you're going to need relationships, and you're going to have a lot of work ethic. Don't. This is what do they say? It's a marathon, not a sprint in this business, and you'll never know where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
wind up or who you get to know. So, value relationships. You're going to have work ethic. You're going to have to be a reader. You're going to have to be someone who looks at big picture and can work in the micro, but think in the macro, I guess is one way of putting it. Empathy is a huge, it's one of our tenets here at the city of Dallas. And to be empathetic gives you that, opens the door to understanding how to work with other people and take their ideas. Um, I've been, like you said, I've been in this industry a long time. And I came from this kind of homogenous pool of a workforce, and I've seen it evolve into something that I could not have imagined in my career as I get towards the end of it. So you have to develop a way of thinking outside of, I started out as a technician, so fixing cars and fixing trucks can be kind of a linear thought process. It used to be all flow charts, if this then this, and but if you're going to manage stuff, you have to know what a manager is, what a supervisor is, and what your expectations of the workforce are. So you know I would guess. I guess I could say that you're going to have to keep learning throughout. Another thing is think broadly. World events happen when you get to this level. When world events happen, whether it's a war overseas or civil unrest around the United States, you have to think about your fleet. The price of fuel. Weather's coming? Should I be topping off my tanks? Give you an example, tires. When you have natural disasters like we have ongoing right now, what do fleet assets usually lose? The first thing that they lose is generally tires and wheels. So now you may see a shortage on tires and wheels, as equipment's going to be in high demand right now. If you've got critical equipment that's behind in your fleet replacement program, get ready, because it's equipment, bucket trucks, all that stuff. So you have to be a big thinker. You have to be able to think in the micro, the macro, value relationships, be empathetic, uh, and I guess, and be a reader.
Yeah, that's good. Good, like you said, it's a marathon, which means it's take it step by step. You have uh, and learn as you go. So, but you didn't tell me how did you get? What did you do before?
I've done this my entire life. I started out as a mechanic, uh, you know, worked in some dealerships and private garages. Then I opened my own shop for a number of years, uh, and then did get into government as a senior technician, a certified technician, having 24, 23, 24 ASEs. Secured a pretty good job, and 6 months after that, it's been kind of this ever since.
Yeah, I remember too when I was I was a teenager, like fixing cars and stuff like that, learning how the mechanics, how they work, and dealing with that. I had a uh, my my first car was a '68 Mustang, but yeah, so that was fun fixing that up and messing around with that car. Yeah, I guess let's get to the next question. So, getting down to a little bit about the fleet. I mean, that you work with over there in Dallas. How many cars are under your management? And could you give us a little bit of idea of the vehicle types, and maybe the
Sure.
driver profiles of your fleet?
Sure. It's a broad spectrum of years, makes, and models. And so you you know it's there's always, for decades there's been discussions to standardize, to not standardize your fleet. That way you have this narrow band of parts that you manage, and these narrow band of training, and that's, however, when something happens to that brand, you also
Yeah,
can be
yeah.
brought to your knees fairly quickly. So we have a little bit of a diversity in our fleet, everything from sanitation trucks to sedans and trailers and horse trailers, and um, obviously protective services is in here, and water equipment, and you know uh, we have alternate fuel vehicles, electric vehicles, and ice engines, and we're going through some of that transition right now in terms of the infrastructure. As far as operators are concerned and technicians, it's a wide variety of, say, novice through skilled operators and experience. And some of our departments, they have pretty good plans together to help guys get CDLs, to help to do a lot of training. City of Dallas spends a lot of time and energy trying to train its staff. I mean, it's a good place to work if you're looking for people to invest in you. You know, so uh, like I said,
About how many vehicles? I was talking with some colleagues of or some yeah, colleagues of mine in New York. They have a lot of vehicles up there.
yeah,
Dallas is smaller, but still a pretty good size. I don't.
yeah,
What about you
we're
guys?
around, just our section of the fleet is probably 6,000. Then there's another 12 to 1,500 in pockets of other departments around the city.
Oh, there's different departments. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you said the transition to electrification, this is coming along, but I guess it's still you got some challenges, I guess, and maybe obstacles to make that happen. I guess you guys are working on that as well, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, the vehicles aren't even the hard part. It's and I give these tips in terms of that. Meet with your fire departments. Meet with your infrastructure. How do you handle
Yeah, yeah,
accidents? I mean, how do you got to prepare for all this stuff in advance? And how do your tow companies move them? If you're going to get into the class 6, 7, and 8s, because they can't always be lifted and towed. And if they're on fire and they're going to, if that were the case, how do we do that in a city that's got traffic and can, um, so there's a lot of moving parts to that. How do you get there? So
yeah. Because that's my next question, kind of like about sustainability. A lot of people, a lot of cities or whatever, they like to talk about sustainability. I don't know what. So for you, what is sustainability? I mean, and how do we go about monitoring this, that we're doing the right thing, and also optimizing it?
sure. So that's a really good question, because in private sector we have this profitability, which is different from sustainability, and you got to kind of split those two up. But for here, it
Yeah,
legitimately
because
is.
sustainability could be related to financial sustainability in the
Yes.
future, and then you got the environmental angle and
Yeah.
social and stuff like that. So
Well, you're right. I mean, we're a political body. We're elected by the people. That's where our service is aimed at. Sustainability is it's I could get on here and say a bunch of pure fleet things. It's about keeping vehicles that aren't so old that they're available and they're in compliant with the most modern EPA restrictions and all those things. And I can hit all those key phrases. But at the same time, is this an affordable avenue? I mean, at this point in time, saying electric vehicles, or they had been on the 6, 7, and 8, significantly more expensive than traditional vehicles so I can replace less of them. So does that mean it pushes part of my fleet out to being older, or are there technologies or solutions? I mean, we'll look at we'll study stuff that's being done, overseas. I was just talking with a vendor about, a function that we do here in the city, and how do they do it in Europe? I mean, they have more narrow alleyways and smaller communities. What types of vehicles do they use over there? Well, those vehicles aren't really permitted to be used in the United States. And so, for whatever reason, when you ask them, so I mean, you have to be creative in solving problems, you know. So to be sustainable, um, again, I go back to the big thinking, the big way of thinking in the first part of it. You have to be an advocate. You have to be able to speak in the academic and in the traditional way about fleet. Academically, this is how many vehicles I need because this is how much staff I have. It's a labor to capital ratio, and this is what we need to produce this if you're going to use it this way. Well, then if the department flips around and changes its strategy, my numbers just changed, and so my replacement dollars need to go up or down or whatever needs to happen. You know, can we do something with hook lift trucks? I mean, we have to take all these pieces and constantly try to rebuild the puzzle, based on what directions we get. So.
You, you were saying that, okay, so like, the corporate world, of course, they got to worry about, profitability as well. And but you're working like in a city government. I'm assuming they worry about that to some extent, but could you give us an idea of like maybe what the difference of, maybe corporate fleet management for a multinational company or a large company or even a medium-sized company, and then this, the government type of fleet?
Sure.
What would be some of the differences
Well,
to manage these types of?
let's take this. This was a really good book by Montgomery Von Wart, and he talked in there about being effective before you're efficient. So we can talk about, private sector might rely heavily on being efficient and doing these things. We have to make sure that not only are we good at the day-to-day stuff, but how do we respond to a disaster or something, or how are we prepared to help our citizens and our support our law protect in the middle of a crisis. And sometimes that's not a very efficient strategy. Sometimes there's a little bit of expense in there. You can say, well, why is there, so much in an extra inventory sitting there? Well, it's because when that happens, this is okay. So those are some of the differences. We have this fiduciary is very different. We don't have shareholders. We have stakeholders. We have a city council. We have, who they are beholden to their members of their district. And then there's a city manager who actually hires and, hires leadership underneath them. So it's very different. I mean, we have a seat cap. They make regulations. They make laws. The federal government adds laws. The state of Texas, has its ideas, and then the city itself, we have another set of ideas. And so how do we mold these things together and keep everybody on pace? And so that's certainly different from saying, hey, I can go out there today I don't have to have any bid process. I don't have to do anything. I'm just looking for, this is exactly what I want. I'd like 10,000 vans. Amazon comes out and does something. They don't wait for the city council to approve it, review. There's the level of transparency is very different.
Do you think the process is longer in government? I guess it takes a bit longer because you have different steps and procedures probably.
Yes, but I've been around long enough to see the value in it, because when you create uncertainty, or there's something that's not, people can't see why it happens that way, or hey, those are the rules. Change the rules. Don't get mad at me if you don't like that. But here's the purchasing process. Here's how we auction things. Those are laws, and we have to follow them. And there's a reason, so that people don't take advantage of.
Yeah.
So.
On this note about I had a question about KPIs, so key performance indicators. For you, are there particular types of KPIs that are important, or we should keep in mind? And what are they, and how do you go about keeping track and monitoring and optimizing them?
Sure. I mean, having a good fleet software system is really essential. And I mean, even if you're a smaller agency, I can't say enough about, but have it set up correctly. We'll see. I've peers of mine who, you know, talking just, you know, when they start customizing stuff, if you haven't mastered it kind of out of the box, when you get your, because a lot of these key performance indicators you're asking about are going to be handled in there, or you can find them. For me personally, again, I talk about determining whether I'm effective at something. So if I'm good at fixing cars and trucks and equipment, okay, what's my downtime look like? Ultimately, for me, it's the cost per meter, whether it's the miles or the hours or a gallon of fuel. How do I maximize a unit of labor, an hour of
What did you
time?
say? The cost per what?
Cost per meter? Cost
Per
per
meter.
meter. Yeah.
Ah,
So over the road trucking, they like to talk about cost per mile because they're using a lot of miles. Equipment likes
okay.
to talk about the cost per hour. That'll be your depreciation, your fuel costs, your parts, your labor, your commercial costs, your taxes, all those things simply divided over the number of units that you use something, whether it's hours, miles, or per gallon of fuel.
And
So
to get all this information, you have particular types of technology to acquire this, I guess, set up with your operations, huh?
correct. You know, uh, we talked a little bit about GPS and however you, whether it's a vehicle identification box or GPS, however you're getting your meter inputs, you need to get them. It's those are absolute must. I mean, there's a lot of metrics underneath that are really valuable. How long does a technician spend at the parts counter? How long does it take you to get parts out? What's our loss fill rate on parts? What's our turn rate on parts? There's some really good books out there. Well, I had them over here somewhere. I was gonna, but there's a lot of good information out there on that stuff. So
And just for acquisition, is that another department that does the acquisition of the vehicles? You're
no,
more like the management guy, the maintenance guy, or
no, we have an asset managed group in fleet maintenance, and so that's something that we do here.
hmm. Okay. Let's see. Let's take a. I just want to. I guess before we go, can you give me an idea of what you've been around doing this for a while, but I don't know there might be some new things in the future. What about the future of fleet management? Is there anything any new strategy or maybe a technology that you think maybe we could look forward to?
I'll say this on the some of them is not. One of them is building your own technicians. This in-house grow your own strategy. Developing staff from within. You're going to have to think differently and identify problems in whether it's reading, whether it's simple instrument use and things like that. Go back and fill in the gaps because you lose a lot of time and energy in repairs that way. That's something that we've spent some time. Guys been in the field 20 years, but you maybe don't realize why you lose a particular piece or a part or a set of tires or an alignment issue, whatever the case is. Filling in those gaps, look to go back and fill those gaps. You talk about advances in technology. There's a lot of technology that fleets will purchase that they don't fully implement. So when you go back, look at that software, that technology you purchased, you didn't just purchase it, you purchased it for a reason. Did it do what it said it was going to do? Or did you wind up having to hire three more staff to manage the technology and now you actually lost money? So if you're investing in technology, make sure you get everything out of that technology. Price of assets. I'm sure the way the pricing structure has changed since COVID and the production line issues and the timeline to deliver vehicles, I'm sure that people are going to start to look at leasing assets in a different way. Regulation and laws making, I talk about that because we get to read and see some of the things that are changing. You're from California, Ed. You had mentioned and sometimes raw laws and regulations are passed, and there's downstream effects to that, and you know, so uh,
Yeah, I guess it depends on the state too. So in some things in California might be different than like in Texas or another state. Then you got federal stuff too as well. And I
Yes.
was thinking about like the new innovative things. Maybe you think maybe the private sector has to dabble around with this first before the government sector does, because they need to test it out first, I guess. So I'm talking about stuff like autonomous cars, vehicle connectivity in the future. I don't know, flying vehicles or something like that. But I like talking about this kind of stuff too. But I think that's more. I guess the private sector kind of like this. Usually, this private sector, usually the smaller innovative companies, I guess, deal with this, and then maybe the larger governments take a look at it afterwards. I guess.
No, no, you're right. I mean, people do bring us sometimes innovations, and you think to yourself, I, but, but then you're going to have to risk something, and
Yeah, yeah,
government
yeah,
are risk averse for sure. So
yeah, yeah,
and they
yeah. I
should be.
don't. I don't really have any other questions, but that's good to get some information from you. And I'm always, I'm sometime in this state or other states. A lot of times I'm outside the country because I cover all the Americas. Sometime in Brazil and Mexico, there
Wow.
in Texas as well. Sometimes in California. Sometimes go out to Detroit or Chicago and stuff like that. But that's about all I have for today, Vincent. But thanks a lot for your insight and the information. You got a lot of years behind you there, and for all who are watching out there, remember some of the things that Vincent said, and thank you for watching.
It's good to be here.
So for insight on the latest in fleet and mobility management and more, visit fleetmobilitytoday.com. And just to let you all know out there, around the corner is a meeting with the Fleet and Mobility Managers Club, FMMC. This time around, we'll be having a meeting with the Latin America group and covering at least 5 countries throughout the region. So we'll keep you updated on what we'll be discussing. And after that, will be North America. So hopefully Vincent will be there.
I will.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Vincent.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Gracias. Obrigado.